Be highs and lows as we go through. Thanks very much indeed. No doubt about it. Okay, Group Political Editor with the Independent News and Media, that is Kevin Doyle. Now, plastic. The British are taking, it seems, an initiative when it comes to regulating plastic. And they've got all these machines and things which eat up plastic around their coasts and things. So maybe they're right ahead of us. We were promised by the Minister for the Environment, Denis Naughten, that he would outlaw these microbeads in cosmetics. It seems to be slow movement here. What are they doing in Britain? Well, Cara Augustenborg is a scientist. She's from Friends of the Earth, but she also does her science job in UCD. You're very welcome, Cara. Thanks for
Happy
coming
New
in.
Year, Declan.
So what are the British doing?
Well, it was great to see last week that Theresa May announced that they are going to increase their levy on plastic bags and take a more proactive approach on microbeads and banning microbeads in products there. And this is something that even in 2016, then Minister for Housing Simon Coveney wrote to the EU and said that Ireland would be enacting its own legislation on microbeads, and yet we've seen nothing. But tomorrow is a big day for plastics. We found at Friends of the Earth that our supporters are really sick of plastic, and there's a big momentum in Ireland right now to address this issue. And tomorrow in the Dáil, the Green Party's waste reduction bill comes up for consideration. So this is really a make or break moment for, is our government actually going to do something to tackle plastics?
And tackle plastics as what? Because in a way, there's lots of things that plastic does for us that we can't do without.
Sure, plastic is a very, very useful product for us, and the problem is that we're not using it efficiently. So 98% of the bottles that are recycled in other countries using a deposit and return scheme are actually recycled, whereas here in Ireland we're wasting 2.5 million bottles a day that aren't being recycled at all, simply because we don't have the processes in place to encourage reuse.
And there's different type of plastics. This is the whole thing. Sometimes you're trying to recycle and do the good thing, and half the product's packaging, one part of the plastic you can recycle, other times you can't, and we don't know the difference between them.
Sure, and there's been surveys done in our supermarkets here that show that over 90% of the packaging around our fruits and vegetables isn't recyclable at all. So we certainly have a long way to go. And those disposable coffee cups that we're throwing 500,000 a day into landfill and incineration, those also aren't recyclable. So we need to work on this. And actually, Friends of the Earth has partnered with Voice and Uplift and Zero Waste Ireland, and we've managed to get over 6,000 people now to sign a petition, putting more pressure on the government, and we'll be submitting that petition tomorrow to the Dáil before they consider this bill. So there is time now, if you're passionate about this issue and you want to put pressure on the government, to sign this petition at foe.ie, and actually have your voice heard on this issue.
Right, and plastic straws, they will go, I suppose. France are doing this thing. I remember it was the first country that I remember actually doing something positive and saying in 2020 they're going to outlaw plastic knives and cups and all sorts of things. You had to go back because they couldn't recycle them.
Yeah, and this is an issue where our EU laws maybe make it more difficult sometimes to do these things, because there is an issue on food hygiene and packaging as a means of making food more hygienic and easily transportable, and it's something we have to address. And I think the Waste Reduction Bill does address that, and that we're trying to get rid of single-use plastic, encourage a deposit and return scheme on plastic bottles, put a levy on things like disposable coffee cups to encourage reuse and encourage people to use more of what we call a keep cup, which is something that Friends of the Earth is promoting right now, a cup that you bring with you to cafes rather than constantly using disposable cups. And finally, we really need to put pressure on supermarkets to reduce the single-use packaging that they're foisting upon us, that we then as consumers have to go in and try and dispose of appropriately.
Right, the British chain Iceland are making some sort of contribution to that by changing. But just to tell you that by 2015, humans produced 6.3 billion tonnes of plastic waste. That's equivalent to the mass of the Eiffel Tower 620,000 times. Also, what about around the ocean? Well, there was all sorts of billions and billions of pieces of plastic floating in the oceans. 5 trillion pieces of plastic floating in the ocean.
Yeah, it's incredible. And a report came out last year that said that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. So, I mean, this is the impact of our constantly using single-use plastic. And it's something that producers of plastic bottles, companies like Coca-Cola that want to use clear plastic bottles consistently, I mean, they use very little recyclable product in their packaging because they think consumers don't want it. They think it's important to consumers to have a nice clear bottle to see their product in. And just today, actually, the EU has produced some draft discussion documents on what they would like to do to tackle plastic. And one of those things is to try and encourage producers of these plastics to use more recyclable materials, to use this more efficiently. And we have technology now in the form of 3D printing where we can actually take waste plastic, break it down, and then use it to print new products. So this is a huge opportunity and moving toward this idea of a circular economy where rather than seeing everything as disposable, we see everything as having a second use when we're done with it.
And, okay, say if all the plastic was recycled and recyclable, and then it's used again, can that plastic then be recycled?
Yeah, we can keep recycling.
Keep going, right.
And I mean, ultimately, plastic is made of fossil fuels, so it's an energy source at the end of the day. If we really can't recycle it any further, but I mean, we need to be much more efficient because if we don't recycle this stuff appropriately and reuse it to the last drop, essentially, it just breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces, and it essentially becomes a microbead, which ends up in the stomachs of fish and ends up in our bodies too, and causes all sorts of problems regarding our hormone disruption and potential cancers and everything. So there's a huge health impact into getting this problem right too.
And the British, what sort of measures as well as microbeads that we're talking about?
The big things that they announced last week were the plastic bag levy, increasing their plastic bag levy, and Ireland has been a pioneer on that issue. I mean,
we're about 23 cent, but in Kenya it's 15 quid or something like
that. Yeah. But I think that the fact that we tackled the plastic bag levy so quickly and so successfully shows that we could lead on plastics once again, and certainly because we're an island nation, and therefore we have 80% of our coastline now has been contaminated by plastic litter pollution. So we have both an opportunity and a reason to really get this issue on plastics right.
Yeah, there's a few changes though we'd have to make. Like if you go to a greengrocer or supermarket or something and take loose carrots or something, the plastic bag is there to put them into.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've heard of people who are really involved in this issue actually leaving the plastic packaging behind and just taking the loose carrots. But one of the things proposed by Theresa May's government in the UK was this idea of a plastic-free aisle in grocery stores. And this is something that I grew up with in the States. A bulk aisle is what they call it, where products are loose, and it could be products like nuts and raisins, dried fruit, or fresh fruit, fresh produce. Where actually there is no packaging involved and you buy it in bulk and you can bring your own packaging if you like to put it in. And if supermarkets here could even have one aisle that was packaging free, that would start a movement toward reducing our packaging here.
Right, and thank you for bringing me up this Keep cup, which means it's a reusable, not disposable coffee cup.
Yeah, so this is a big movement now here is this idea of a Keep Cup, and there's a Conscious Cup campaign on Facebook where you can go on and you can see what cafes in your area will give you a refund if you bring in your own cup like this. And sometimes it's up to 20% refund or 20 cents refund, or it's a charitable donation to someone like Friends of the Earth. But also too, if you become a Friends of the Earth supporter right now for €4 a month, we're giving these out to new members. So if you go to foe.ie, you'll get your own Keep Cup to reuse and start the new year out right.
Very good. Okay, well, it's going to be the topic of the year. Mark my words when it comes to the future of the world, and it's all about plastic. Thanks very much indeed to Cara Augustenborg
for
coming into us this morning. Thank you. Happy New Year.